A weird thing happens when you watch how rich people use debt. They don't avoid it. They don't fear it. And they only pick it up when it makes them stronger. Here's the uncomfortable number that should make your stomach drop. The average credit card interest rate in late 2025 was around 21%. Think about that. That's not a little expensive. That's a treadmill with the speed cranked up. If your balance is $6,000, that rate can quietly chew up more than $100 a month in interest alone, before you even buy groceries. And if you've ever felt like you work hard but your money doesn't, you're not crazy. It's math. Bad debt steals your snowball's momentum. Can ADD momentum. So let's make this clean. Debt is not good or bad by itself. Debt is a lever. Or crush your fingers. And they only borrow when the debt helps them buy something that pays. Not something that flexes, not something that fades, something that pays. And to prove this isn't hype, I'm going to walk you through 5 ways the wealthy do it, using a real person story. Meet Harry. Harry works as an accounts payable clerk. He's the guy who checks invoices all day and catches mistakes before money leaves the company. It's steady work. It's not glamorous. It's real. After taxes and benefits, he brings home $3,197 a month. He rents a converted basement unit. It's not terrible, but it's not freedom either. And because life happens, Harry's carrying credit card debt from a car repair and a dentist bill that hit in the same month. Balance: $4,743. Eat minimum payment: $147. And here's what annoyed him. He'd pay, and pay, and pay. But the balance barely moved. Sound familiar? If you've ever paid money and still felt stuck, you get it. Then Harry hears a sentence that flips his brain. Morgan Housel says it in his book, The Psychology of Money. And more to do with behavior, not IQ, not perfect timing. Behavior. Painful. His debt isn't just expensive. It's training him to behave like someone who's always catching up, always reacting, always patching holes. So he makes a deal with himself. Not a motivational speech, a system. He decides he's going to learn how rich people use debt without getting trapped by it. And he's going to test 5 moves, one by one. Not for clout, for control. Ready? Good. And the most powerful. They use long-term debt to control an asset that someone else helps pay for. You already know what this is, a mortgage. But the rich don't treat a mortgage like a house payment, for decades. Now, quick pause. Because someone hearing this might think, so I should rush and buy a house? No, slow down. Smart debt only works when the asset can handle the debt. Otherwise, it's a costume. Here's how the rich think. If I didn't live here, would this still make sense? That's the asset test. Because rich people love debt that has a long time horizon and a predictable structure, when the numbers are right. And this is not rare. The Federal Reserve has shown that across a huge chunk of the wealth distribution, housing is a major asset, and mortgages are the major debt. That's not an accident. It's leverage on a productive thing. Harry's version of this is smaller. He's not buying a mansion. He starts watching for a small duplex in an affordable area. The idea is simple. Live in one unit, rent the other. Let the rent cover a chunk of the payment, not forever, just long enough to build the snowball. But Harry isn't there yet, because he still has the credit card anchor, so he doesn't jump. He keeps watching and learning. They use short-term, cheap debt to kill long-term, expensive debt fast. This is where people get it backwards. Most people use debt to buy stuff. The rich use debt to buy time, with a clear payoff plan. This is where balance transfers exist. This can be dangerous, because 0% for 18 months sounds like free money. But it's only smart if you treat it like a countdown timer, not a vacation. So Harry does something different than most people. He doesn't move the balance and hope. He builds a constraint. He calls it the deadline box. It's literal. A small index card taped inside a kitchen cabinet door where he can't miss it. On it, he writes one sentence. This debt dies by October. No excuses. Then he writes the exact monthly amount required to eliminate the balance before interest returns. He doesn't use round numbers. He calculates it. $4,743 divided across 16 months gives roughly $297 per month, plus a little buffer for fees. So he sets a target payment of $311. Every month, same week, same day. And here's the trick. He makes the payment on the day his rent clears. Not payday, rent day. Because rent day is the moment he feels the most financial seriousness. It's a natural trigger. His brain is already in adult mode. That's smart debt behavior, not willpower, design. And when he sticks to it, the snowball starts moving again. The balance drops, week by week. And for the first time, Harry sees the relationship between cost of debt and speed of wealth building. It's not just paying bills, it's removing friction from his future. Now, before we go further, remember the world we're living in. Total household debt in the United States hit about $18.8 trillion by the end of 2025, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Debt is everywhere, so the game isn't never touch it. The game is don't let it eat your future. Harry clears his card balance earlier than expected, and when he does, something wild happens. He has breathing room, not a lot, instead of selling assets. This is where rich people start playing a totally different game. Because when you sell an asset, you stop the compounding. When you borrow against an asset, the asset can keep growing while you access cash. That's the concept. And you'll see this with things like a securities-backed line of credit, or borrowing against business assets, or even borrowing against home equity. This can be very risky if you don't know what you're doing. If the asset drops, the lender can demand more collateral. You can get squeezed. So smart people treat this like a chainsaw. You don't test it on your leg. You learn the rules. Then you use it with respect. So Harry doesn't rush into it. He runs a safe experiment. And he asks himself one question. What would I use it for that produces more cash than it costs? Not a trip. Not a car upgrade. A cash-producing move. That question alone filters out 90% of dumb decisions. And here's the part that surprises most people. Rich people don't borrow to feel rich. They borrow to buy production. Production is the snowball engine. So what does Harry buy? Not a stock pick? Not a crypto bet? He buys a small tool set and parts inventory to restart a weekend side hustle. He's good at fixing phones and tablets. He did it in high school for friends. Now he does it again, but with a system. He sets a rule, plus at least $67 profit every time, no exceptions. He starts slow. 2 repairs the first weekend, then 4, then 6, and suddenly, Harry has something he didn't have before. A micro business that throws off cash, not massive money, but consistent. Now we're approaching the moment that makes people's brains pop. Because the next move is where smart debt turns from helpful into almost unfair. Here's the fourth way rich people snowball wealth with smart debt. They use other people's money to buy cash flow. Then they use the cash flow to buy more cash flow. It's recursive. It stacks. This is the heart of the snowball. They only think about debt as a payment. The wealthy think about debt as a tool that can be covered by the thing it buys. So instead of asking, "Can I afford the payment?" they ask, "Can the asset afford the payment?" That's a different universe. So Harry watches a pattern at work. He earns a few $100s a month from repairs. He saves it, not in a fancy account, but in a separate envelope system at home labeled parts. Old school, because he wants to see it. Then he uses that growing pile to qualify for a tiny business credit line through a local bank. He keeps it small on purpose, not because he's scared, because he's smart. He uses the credit line to buy a better heat gun, a microscope attachment, and a bulk order of common replacement parts. Total cost, $977. Now the profits per repair jump. He can do harder repairs. He can do them faster, and the cash flow increases. This is what the rich do with business debt all the time. They finance equipment. They finance inventory. They finance growth, but only when the payback is clear. Here's Harry's rule. If the tool can't pay itself off in 90 days, he doesn't buy it. That one rule keeps him out of trouble. We hit the reveal. This is the part you're going to remember, because it shows you what smart debt actually is. Smart debt is when the cost of borrowing is lower than the value you can produce with the borrowed money. That's it. That's the whole game. Now let's validate this from 3 angles, so your brain trusts it. First, the principle, and how compounding rewards the person who stays in the game. Smart debt is a way the wealthy stay in the game by preventing liquidation, preventing panic selling, and buying time when it's rational. Second, the reality check. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has shown that consumers pay enormous amounts in credit card interest and fees, and that late fees alone were over $14 billion in 2019. That's a leak that destroys compounding. So rich people don't let high-cost consumer debt hang around. They refinance it, eliminate it, or replace it with cheaper tools when it makes sense. Third, Harry's proof. Before this experiment, Harry was paying $147 minimum payment and barely moving. Now, his repair hustle is producing an average of $391 per month, and still leaves profit. The debt isn't a weight anymore, it's a lever. That's the moment. And if you've never thought of debt like that, good, because now you can stop using it like a trap. Now, there's still one more way the rich snowball wealth with smart debt, and it's the one people copy the most badly. The fifth way is called recycling equity, and it's powerful if you respect it. This is when someone builds equity in an asset, then borrows against that equity to buy another asset, and repeats. This is common in real estate. It can also show up in business acquisitions. The next purchase must have cash flow, otherwise you're just stacking risk. So Harry sees this concept years later when he finally buys that duplex. He lives in one unit, he rents the other. Over time, the loan balance drops and the property value rises. And he builds equity. But he doesn't touch it immediately. He waits. He watches the numbers. He learns what happens when people get greedy. Because greed is how smart debt becomes dumb debt. And so he sets a rule. He only borrows against equity if the new asset can survive 3 bad surprises at once. Vacancy, repair, rate change. 3 hits. If the deal can't survive that, he doesn't do it. Because the rich aren't allergic to risk. They're allergic to fragile risk. And this is the mindset shift that changes everything. Most people want debt to make life easier today. The rich want debt to make life larger tomorrow. Now, if you're listening and thinking, okay, but I'm not rich. I can't do duplexes and business credit lines. I get it. So let's bring this down to earth and make it usable. Here's how to think like the wealthy without pretending you're them. Start with one question. What debt do I have right now that produces nothing? That's bad debt. It might be normal, it might be common, but it's still a leak. And in a world where credit card rates are hovering around 21%, leaks are lethal. Lending tree. Then ask the second question, would I actually pay it off? Be honest. The tool isn't the issue, the behavior is. That's what Housel was talking about. Then ask the third question. If I borrowed money tomorrow, what would I buy that creates cash flow? Not value, not vibes. Cash flow. Money that comes back, because that's the dividing line. Now, I need to say something important. If you're younger or you're not legally able to sign for credit yet, this still matters. Or your ladder later. You can learn the rules before you're even allowed to play. That's power. And if you are allowed to borrow, don't jump fast. Start small. Start controlled. Start with guardrails. Harry's guardrails were simple. He used triggers tied to real-life moments, rent day, invoice day at work, weekend schedule. He made progress visible. He made rules that prevented fantasy decisions. And he treated debt like fire, useful, dangerous, never casual. So let's recap the 5 ways, without the fluff. Long-term debt to control an asset that can pay itself. Short-term cheap debt to kill expensive debt on a deadline. Borrowing against assets so you don't have to sell assets. Business debt to buy production that pays back fast. Recycling equity to stack cash-flowing assets carefully. Rich people don't use debt to look rich. They use debt to buy things that make them rich. That's the snowball. Not motivation, not luck, not a secret stock tip. Used with discipline. Now, imagine what happens if you apply just one of these ideas to your life. Not all 5, just one. You eliminate the expensive debt leak. Or you fund a small cash-flowing skill. Or you stop selling assets every time life hits you. That's how the snowball begins. Slow, then steady, scary. And one day, you wake up and realize your money is moving even when you're not. That's the moment you stop feeling trapped. That's the moment you feel calm. Because now you're not just surviving the month, you're building the machine. And you don't need to be perfect. And start respecting it like a tool. Small moves, smart rules, long timeline. That's how wealth snowballs. That's how the rich do it. You know the game.